In this unit, we're going to start to discuss selections and how selections can help you grab pieces of images and mesh them in with other images. There are many different types of selections. I know in Photoshop, there's a huge assortment of the way you can select certain pieces. Touch has done a good job in terms of, I'm going to fire up Touch here. Touch has done a good job in terms of translating some of those tools from Photoshop over to the iPad, which allows you to create some interesting selection ideas. Okay, let me show you again kind of what we're shooting for here. We're going to actually work with some vegetables, and for this particular example, there's a bunch of veggies which you can find. I threw them, for the sake of this lesson, I threw them in a Dropbox folder that's shared to all of the students. So you're going to see me go back to that Dropbox folder quite a bit to go grab these pictures of veggies. Rather than use Google to try to find pieces of these things, I just actually went ahead and created my own. So we look at all these vegetables are on the cutting board, the exception being the melon and the banana. Those are obviously fruits. But what I have done was take each individual vegetable, and I was able to select each of the vegetables off of their own picture and then add them to this cutting board picture. So I'm going to show you all of the selection tools based upon, you know, what veggie we need and some of the dynamics of each vegetable or fruit that we're looking to select. If you notice though, each of the veggies, by the way, over here is on its own layer. So that's, in the end, that's how we're going to end up with this picture. And again, the idea is you want to keep them on their own layer just in case you want to do something to them a little bit later. Okay, so this is kind of what we're looking to do. Let's actually, I am gonna, yeah, we'll save that. Actually, you know what? Let's start with the cutting board itself. So I'm gonna kind of go into, and you're gonna see me adjust screens here every time. I'm gonna go into my Dropbox, and here's the folder with all the veggies in it. Again, I've got it in a class folder. Here they are all listed out. So I'm going to open up the cutting board. This actually kind of gives you a good introduction to how you get from Dropbox to Touch, which seems to be the challenge in terms of for iPad users in terms of using them in educational settings, how to get from one piece to another. So in Dropbox, I can copy this image to the clipboard, and then what I want to do is go back to Touch. And I'm going to open up, let's open up a new one. 1024 by 768 is fine. And then what I'm going to do is immediately paste. And so you see the cutting board here. Kind of fits in nicely. Don't worry about it. Once I get all my veggies on here, we're going to go ahead and crop to get rid of the transparency. But I'm good to go here. I'm just going to say OK. And I'm going to get rid of that base layer that starts out with everyone. So now my only background layer is my cutting board here. And we're ready to go. We're ready to lay out some veggies onto this thing. The selection menu, or the selection tools. You'll notice there are many different types of selections. The first 3 rows, in all honesty, are all selection tools going down through here. There are 4 types of selection tools. The first type is the geometric selection tools, which primarily revolve around the rectangle here and the elliptical selection tool, either one. Obviously, the reason they're called geometrical is because they're based on a shape itself. Those are your geometric selection tools. You also have your freehand selection tools, which tend to be your lasso tool and your polygonal. Photoshop actually has a magnetic lasso tool, which is pretty cool as well. But the Touch only carries 2 of them, which is your regular freehand lasso, and then your polygonal. And those are called freehand selections because you're basically using either your finger strokes or your stylus strokes to create a selection based upon what you want to draw with your own hand. So first we have geometric, second we have freehand. The third, there's only one particular tool associated with this, and these are color-based selections tools. In Photoshop there's many more of them, but in this particular case on Touch there is only one color-based selection, and this is called the magic wand. The magic wand will select based upon what color you pick. It's a pretty powerful tool. If I choose the magic wand and I'm on my cutting board, and you'll notice the white background, if I just push on the white, all of the white becomes selected. And I kind of want to show you this real quick. This is going to become a feature that if you know, like if you're taking a picture of something and you know you're going to select it out, you want to put it on a solid background, because really the easiest way to select these things once you have them in is this process that I'm about to. Let me deselect again. So I've got the idea that I've got the image. I want the cutting board, and I'm going to do something with the cutting board. So I'm going to take the cutting board out of this picture. I'm not going to in this particular case, but I just want to show you this process. I would hit the white to select the white, and then if I go up to my selection menu, there's a command called inverse. And the idea behind this is I've told Touch to select all of the white. Now I'm going to tell Touch I don't want the white particularly. I want everything but the white. So if I hit inverse, you'll notice the cutting board is now selected, and then the outside of each of the edges out here is selected. And I just push down on it. So that's a neat feature when you start thinking about taking an image of something, taking a picture of something, and then really figuring out what you're going to do with it later so that you can put it on certain color backgrounds. This works for more than just white too, by the way. We just happen to have a white background on this picture, so I'm going to deselect. So that's a color-based selection, and that's the magic wand. And the last and probably the most exciting in Touch are these two here, which are called hybrid selections. One is the Scribble Selection tool, and the other is the Brush Selection tool. And those tend to use a combination of color-based, geometric-based. They're called hybrid because they use many different features of previous selection tools that you've used before. Okay, so there's your breakdown. You've got geometric, freehand, color-based, and then your hybrids. So you have 4 types of selections. Okay, I think we're ready to put in our first veggie, and we'll use some of the different geometric selection tools here. So let's go back. We'll go back to Dropbox here, and let's choose. Let's see. Let's pick. Let's do the melon first. This will be a good one. I'm going to grab the melon. I am going to copy image to clipboard. I'm going to go back to Photoshop, Touch, and I'm going to go to the edit menu and paste. And there's the melon. I'm okay there, and that's just to help me with the layers. Here's you got your melon layer over your cutting board layer, so that's good. I'm going to use, obviously this looks like a circle, so I'm going to use the circle selection tool. And what I'm going to try to do is draw a circle as big as the melon. I'm dragging down on my stylus, and I'm going to make it as big as I can, and then try to center it around the melon. Not bad. I move it right over the melon, and it doesn't look too bad. So let me shift it over a little bit this way. I think I'm a little bit into the wood of the background here. Okay, we look all right there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the edit menu, the pencil, and I'm going to use, you're going to see this command used quite a bit. I'm going to extract. And there's my melon. The tricky part here, when you still have a selection, and let's say I transform from the selection immediately and I shrink it. Oh, not too bad here. You don't see it too much. Occasionally you'll get a ghosting around it, and that's because you're still selected before you transform. So even before you transform, you should always deselect. I'll try to show it to you again if I could get some kind of ghosting, and then transform. And I'll shrink that down. We're going to move that. It's not too bad. It actually kind of looks like it's got a little bit of a drop shadow on there. I'm going to move that, shrink it down, move it to the top left corner of the cutting board. All right, so there's the circle selection. I'll talk about these modes in a second. The modes are there on any selection tool that you may have, so we'll get to that in a second. Anti-Alias, what Anti-Alias does is it smooths out the edges around an image. It's going to take the colors around the image and not make them quite as contrast. What you'll see when something is not anti-alias is you'll get a really rough, sharp edge between color to color. And what anti-alias will do is increase the color depth it's almost like it throws in a gradient right around the edge. And it does it right at the pixel level, so you don't even see what's going on. So in essence, the definition of anti-alias is to smooth out an edge. I constantly have that on in terms of whatever selections I'm using. Okay, so we're good with the melon. Let's go. Obviously, you could do rectangle as well. And within rectangle selection, we mess around with this in shapes. The only other option in rectangle selection is to be able to round your corners, which again, you probably wouldn't use if you're really using it as a selection tool. You would use it more when you're trying to create some shapes, which we've done in the past in terms of using a selection to create a certain shape. All right, so let's talk about some of the freehand ones. Let's add another fruit or veggie. I'm going to go back to Dropbox. And let's grab the, let's do the cucumber. We'll talk about some freehand ideas there. I'm going to copy image to the clipboard, copies. I'm going to go back to touch, and I'm going to paste. And we have our cucumber. I'm going to place it. That's fine. All right, freehand. Let me go to the Lasso Tool. And one of the things about the Lasso Tool is you're going to find out real quickly that it all depends upon how well you are either using your finger or your stylus. So the Freehand Lasso Tool, I'm just going to try, and you'll see it just actually draws a line around wherever your stylus or your finger is. And it waits until you connect the two, and it creates the selection for you. So you can select any kind of shape you want to do as long as you can draw it. If you can draw a perfect triangle, you can do a perfect triangle, circles, you get the idea. But it's all based upon how well you, the dexterity in your hand and your finger or your stylus, whichever one you're using. Tough selection tool to use if you're not very good at moving around your hand. You need a very good stylus too. I've used some styluses that stick to the screen a little bit more. I've got a good one right here. This is a Kensington. I like this one a lot. It doesn't stick to the screen too much, and it gives me a good touch and feel. So, but again, not saying I use the freehand selections quite a bit. Once I've found, what you're going to realize is once you found a certain selection tool that you like, you'll get good at just that one tool, and you'll be able to use it in most cases. Here's the Polygonal Lasso Tool. So I'm going to start at the top, and I'm going to place an insertion point. You'll see it right there in the middle. And then how you use the Polygonal Lasso Tool is you move on to the next spot. And the minute I start clicking into the next spot, you'll see a straight line form from dot to dot. And then I'm going to click on the next spot and create that line. And I shake it a little bit. So you can understand this is more for a straight edge kind of thing, straight edge kind of feel. As I go around, obviously the cucumber ends are very round in nature. And you can make these little arcs as small or as big as you want. So you can honestly, if you wanted to go around the cucumber, you could just make small lines. And again, this won't finish, won't fully select until you get back into, it's almost like a video game. You get back into the regular, your start circle again, and then it'll go ahead and create the selection for you. So now you could actually create a perfect triangle if you wanted to, provided you go into the circles once you're all done. Okay, this gives you those hard edges. Could I have done the cucumber like that? Most certainly, but I actually did a better job, honestly, with the cucumber with the freehand. So let me go back and do that. And I'm just gonna freehand this one. And I want to show you something after I'm done here. Okay, so I've got a selection. The other piece I want to show you is, even though you've got a selection around here, there is a way that you can make it better. So if I go to the selection menu, there's this command called Refine Edge, and I'm going to hit that, and it basically shows you the cucumber in a sea of red, where the cucumber is its natural color, and the red is basically what's called the mask. It's the parts of the picture that you don't want. And you've got all kinds of stuff here. You've got two toggles below. You've got a paintbrush and an eraser, and then you've got a brush size, and then undo and redo. So let me just check the brush size real quick. We're not bad. We're gonna about medium range. I'm gonna be on the paintbrush, and what that's basically saying is the paintbrush, I'm going to go over the edge of the cucumber, and it's going to readjust the edge of the red color. And the red color, again, is going to be what you don't want, where the cucumber color is going to be what you do want. Let me go to the eraser here real quick, because I've got some red that's seeping into the top left corner of this cucumber, and if I just go over that top red, it gets rid of the mask. So I get a further defined edge. And I look around and I think I'm good. Keep in mind the red is what you don't want, and then the colored cucumber is what the selection should. So if I click OK here, let's see what that selection looks like. And not bad, actually. I get a little bit of the higher of the cucumber. That's okay. So I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to extract that. And there's my cucumber. Let me try to transform this one now. Let's see if I get it ghosting. There it is right there. So here we go with that problem again. I had it selected. I started to transform it and to shrink it, and you see the ghosting that happens of the edge of the cucumber. So I am going to cancel out of that, and before I transform, I am going to deselect. Now transform. There we go, and there goes that ghosting. And I'm going to move the, we'll put the cucumber right up here. Shrink that down just a little bit. Okay, so we have a melon and a cucumber. We've used both the geometric selections and the freehand selections. Now we're going to move into the more advanced selections. Now I'm going to work with the tomatoes. I'm going to show you the add or subtract from a selection function. We're actually going to use geometric, or I'm sorry, freehand again. So I'm going to head over to Dropbox, go grab the tomatoes. We are going to copy those to the clipboard, and then go back to Photoshop and paste those in. I'm going to place them. And I'm going to use the freehand tool, and I'm going to try as best as I can to grab, and I'm really going quickly for a reason here. I would take more time. And you'll notice that I didn't do a great job selecting. So this happens from time to time. You'll notice there's some goofy stuff up in here too in the top left corner. So let's say I go ahead and I choose Add to Selection. And what I want to do is, basically my next selection moves are going to add to the entire selection. So I'm going to just make a circle in that piece. And you see how it gets rid of all of that mess in the middle. So maybe I come down here to the bottom right corner of the right tomato there. And I can do whatever I want inside because the selection's already there. Doesn't matter. So I can be as crazy as I want on the inside. Let me expand this. Here's another good tip too when you're doing selections. If you make it nice and big, it's a whole lot easier to do. So I'm going to grab, and it doesn't matter what I do in here, but the minute I shoot outside the tomato, I'm very careful as to what I do, and it adds to that selection. So you could go through and take your time on these sections, and it really doesn't matter what you do on the inside of the selection, and it goes ahead and adds to each piece. So I'm going to take my time, and this is a good way to do things because you can really take your time on certain sections and make sure you get the selection, but then not worry so much about once you're inside the circle. I get that going. That's not bad. Actually, I got to get this piece right here, and then one little last bump right here. And then if you wanted to subtract from the selection, let me just make a bigger selection. Let's say we go like this. And you'll see where I made like a huge selection that I don't want. Now if I go over to subtract from a selection, I'm starting from the outside in. So I'm going to go, it doesn't matter what I do out here because that's already not part of the selection. And I cut across and I go out that way. And then that'll take away from the selection. So not bad. I'm going to actually fix this piece right here. And getting closer. And you can see how you can further develop the selection. You could also refine edge on this as well. Same idea. And you'll be able to do that. So I think I'm good there. I'm going to extract. I got my tomatoes. I'm going to deselect, make sure I don't get any type of mirroring or ghosted image there. And I'm going to shrink those up. I'm going to put those down to the bottom right corner here. And I'm good to go. That's how you add and subtract from a selection. All right, so let's talk about some of the hybrids of the color. Let's go in through the magic wand here. So we will grab the probably, let's do the banana because it's got a good color selection there. So I'm going to copy and then go into Photoshop and paste. Place it. And let's see what this magic wand does. I'm going to slide to the magic wand. You've got a couple of settings here that probably you didn't see before. Tolerance. And all tolerance is it allows you to divide the difference between the colors. If your tolerance is high, let me just put that up to as high as it can go and then hit the cutting board. You'll see that the whole entire cutting board is selected along with the banana. So it's grabbing an incredible amount of colors. So tolerance high is not good because it doesn't really give you what you want. If I slide it back down to 35 or so, and then let me just deselect my last selection and then hit it again. Now it's grabbing some colors that are somewhat consistent. You got some lighter colors in here. It's grabbing a piece of the banana for some reason. So you can understand that the higher the tolerance, the more of the image you're going to get, the more colors it's going to pick from. The lower the tolerance, the less colors you're going to get. So let me deselect that. Let me go even smaller on the tolerance, and let me hit the banana here and see what happens. So I got pieces of the banana actually being selected. You'll see that there's darker yellow in here that didn't get selected. And again, that's because my tolerance is low. But again, I can mess around with these add and subtract selections, and you can start to see that I can pretty much, oh, that one kind of a messy one. But you can pretty much figure out what colors it's going to pick just by choosing the colors. And you can mess with the tolerance in between selections. Yeah, that was a big selection right there. So this particular case, I would tell you, you know, that idea that grabbing a background color, I obviously took a picture of this banana on a wood background, which is causing a little bit of an issue with the magic wand selection. But if I was to go back to the cutting board idea, you would see that when you have a picture, let me unview all those, grab the white, it just selects the white, and then you could use that inverse idea to actually grab the pieces. Now you'll notice up above the transparent piece is selected as well because it wasn't white. So if I just hit minus on there and then hit the transparent piece, oops, not the menu, the transparent section, the transparent goes away, and I think there's a piece in the bottom too. Yeah, if I hit there. Okay. So now you would see, if I shrink this up, you would see just the cutting board is selected. So it's a great feature of the magic wand to be able to do that. Just to, again, take a picture on a solid color and then to be able to use the magic wand. Let me deselect because we really don't need that. Let me throw all my, let's actually go get the banana using another tool. Probably the most popular tools that most people use are the brush selects or the Scribble Select. I'll show you Scribble Select later. Let's do the brush selection tool. I'm going to expand the banana, and brush selection tool gives you an idea of how big the brush is going to be. So my brush size is roughly, we'll put that down to 39. And I'm good to go there. And the minute I start painting, you see the paint forming on the banana, and I'm just going to paint over what I want to select within the banana. I'm going to come down, and I'm going to fix this after the fact anyway. So I'm going to take my time around the edges, and then I'm just going to fill in. And let's say I don't want to take all this time to fill in the rest of the banana. There's my selection. I can hit the add to selection, increase the brush size, and then fill in with a bigger brush. And as long as I'm on the add to selection piece, my selection stays intact. I could also subtract from a selection as well. Oop, missed a spot right there, so I'm just going to briefly go through there. Let me refine edge here. I'll show you that refine edge tool again. You'll notice the red. This is really cool. If you can get used to something, get used to the refine edge, because this tool is really, really important when it comes to actually getting the selections that you want. Look good. Let's see what this turns out to be. Looking good. So I'm going to extract that, and my banana is done. Deselect so I don't get any ghosting. Transform. I'm actually going to rotate this too a little bit. So put it in a different spot. Shrink it up a little bit. Move that over. Put that right next to the cucumber. I'm going to shrink it up even more. Make it a plantain. So there's my banana. It's all placed on the cutting board, and I'm good to go. All right, last selection tool. We are going to work with the onion. So I'm going to go grab the onion, and the reason I'll tell you why we're working with the onion. The onion is not a perfect shape. You've got some skin layers that are falling off, and we want to grab the whole thing. So I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to go back to Touch, and I'm going to paste and place the onion. This is going to shrink it up just a little bit. Give me a good work area. Okay, so the last one, probably the most exciting one too, Scribble Selection. There are two modes in Scribble Selection. You'll see them above. One is Keep, one is Remove. Currently, I'm in Keep. So in essence, what you want to do is, I'm not going to grab the left piece of the skin, but I am going to grab the bottom piece of the skin. And what you're going to do is outline the area that you want to keep. So I'm going to go all the way around the onion. And I'm basically telling Photoshop Touch, I want to keep what's on the inside. I'm going to switch it over and go to Remove, and I'm going to trace the same thing around the outside of the onion. And I want to remove everything on the outside. And give it a second, and it comes up with a selection. Okay, now in this particular case, I'll probably want to refine edge a little bit. So we'll get that going. That's going to be a little bit of an issue there. And cover that a little bit, and cover that one a little bit. And get into there a little bit. That doesn't look too bad. Get into there. And I'm going to get in here a little bit. And I've got a little bit, so I'm going to subtract this red right here from that onion. I'm going to keep going. And that looks pretty good. Let's see what the selection looks like based upon that. Not bad. What I may want to do, let me grab the Paintbrush Selection, and I'm going to say Add to Selection, which it's already in, and I'm just going to paint in that whole arc right there. And let's see what that does. A little bit better there. Let me use a smaller brush here. You'll start to see how you can actually get a pretty good selection. Rounded corner, perfect. I am going to extract and deselect, and there are my onions. And I could put my onions down on my cutting board right there. Okay, a couple more things in the selection menu which I haven't really covered too well. Let's go grab another veggie here, another piece of something. Let's grab the broccoli. And we're going to copy that to the clipboard. And I'm going to paste. There's my broccoli. Place it. So in this particular case, let's grab, we'll do the Scribble Selection one more time, see if we can get a better selection on that one. So I'm going to be in Keep mode. And I'm just going to real quickly go through the outside of the broccoli. And then go ahead and remove the other stuff. Go up into the selection menu, and I want to, let's go to transform here. Let's see what this does. And what transform allows you to do is to change your actual selection. So if I drag on these boxes, you see the selection changing. I can shift it up, I can move the entire thing, I can rotate the selection. Okay, and again, it's using that red color as a mask. But typically transform works better when you're in a geometric selection like a rectangle or a circle. That's when you really want to transform your selection because it's more uniform in terms of where you're moving around. Me using the Scribble Select gives me an odd selection area, so transforming it here probably wouldn't work out too well. But if you were to use, I could show it to you right here. Let me deselect. Going back to maybe a circle selection. So I create a circle selection and now I transform. You can actually change the dimensions of that circle selection just by grabbing on a corner if you want, which changes it proportionally, or one of the sides. You can rotate it as well. So that's probably where you would use some type of a transform. To cancel out of that, let me step back. Hopefully I can grab that. There we go. That was my Scribble Select. The other one is Feather, which I haven't really covered too much. So let me grab Feather. And what Feather, watch the selection as I drag on this. What Feather allows you to do is to expand the selection area by blurring out the edges. And if you notice, the edge of the selection area is starting to blur a little bit. As I drag on the radius, you get more of a hard edge down below on the lower radius. But when you push it up, it's basically blurring the edge a little bit, so you get a good blend of what you want is the foreground and the background. The red is not as deep right around the exact edges of the broccoli, so if I say OK, watch what the selection looks like. It tends to be more rounded in nature, so it tends to smooth out your selection by blurring colors. Similar to Anti-Alias, although Anti-Alias works at the pixel level, Feather tends to kind of just blur the edges out around the sides. And make your edge your selection edge smoother in essence. But if I go back, what I would do in this particular case is just refine edge. As I look at refine edge, just kind of cover some of the edges, and you'll see that the idea of this refine edge is pretty powerful. Still trying to get a little more up top there. Looks pretty good there. I say OK. And once that's selected, we will go ahead, extract, and paste the broccoli. Deselect. Move the broccoli where it should be. There we go. And the broccoli is placed. You can go ahead if you'd like and go ahead and replace all of your veggies or fruits on there just by using the selection tools. But I've given you a good overview of what each of them does and how each of them works, and as well as the selection menu right up in here.